Australia. Liberal Senator James Paterson is the newly appointed chair of Parliament's powerful Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security. Senator Paterson, welcome to RM Breakfast.
Good morning, Fran.
Does this come as any surprise to you that Cheng Lei has now been formally arrested after being detained for almost 6 months?
No, I can't say that it's surprising, Fran, and it is something that we are very concerned about. In the Chinese system, it's not unusual for people to be detained for up to 6 months without charge or without even being formally arrested. But they've now gone to that next stage. She has been formally arrested, and the upcoming stage could last for up to 7 months of investigation before she's formally charged, let alone tried.
Yeah, these are very serious charges that we're hearing of. She's accused of unlawfully supplying or intending to supply state secrets or intelligence to an overseas organisation to individuals. So very serious accusations. The Chinese ministry has said overnight Australia should respect China's sovereignty, stop interfering, and Cheng Lei has been guaranteed various rights. How should Australia respond to this? What should our government be doing? What can it do?
Well, that really is an absurd accusation from the Chinese ministry. We've done nothing of the sort of interfering in their legal system. We have no capacity to interfere in their legal system. All we've done is the same thing we would do for any Australian citizen detained anywhere in the world, which is to robustly advocate for their interests, both directly to the Chinese government and publicly, as the Foreign Minister did yesterday, to ensure that basic norms, international norms that almost all countries says they agree to, of procedural fairness and justice are followed, and particularly in the case of this woman who is a single mother who has 2 young children here in Melbourne, who she hasn't seen for at least 6 months now.
Australia's Foreign Minister, Marise Payne, says Australia expects basic standards of justice, procedural fairness and human treatment. Do you hope that Cheng Lei will receive that?
That's of course our hope, and that is what we'll be advocating for, and it is really up to the Chinese government to provide that, and knowing of course that the international community in the world will judge them according to how they conduct themselves.
What leverage does Australia have though? I mean, there hasn't been any high-level contact at the ministerial level between Canberra and Beijing for some time now, more than a year, maybe even 2 years close to. How much harder does that make it for Australia to try and influence and make sure that Cheng is afforded fairness?
That's true, Fran, although it's not due to any lack of trying on our part. Ministers at every level in our government have been trying to engage constructively, diplomatically with their counterparts in China for some time now, and it's on the Chinese side that they've decided not to reciprocate, and that's a decision that lies entirely within their own control and not within ours. We do make representations directly at every other level, though, and it doesn't stop us from raising robustly the interests of Australian citizens, both privately to the Chinese government and publicly.
What's your reading on this? I mean, the minister said she wouldn't speculate, but, is this a tit-for-tat situation, for Australia's foreign interference laws? The interviews ASIO conducted with Chinese journalists last year, for instance, the 2 visiting scholars who had their visas taken away cancelled on the grounds of being a risk to security. Is that what's going on here?
Well, we don't know, Fran, and all I can say is that I really hope that that's not the case, because if it were the case, it would amount to the Chinese government admitting that it takes political hostages in a retaliatory way. There really is no comparison to be made between Cheng Lei's case and all those other cases that you mentioned. For example, the raids on Chinese journalists. None of those journalists were detained without charge. None of them were held to be investigated for months on end. They were all allowed to return home safely and uninterrupted by the Australian government, so that there is no comparison to be drawn there.
Is there a fear of hostage diplomacy being ramped up? I mean, Cheng Lei was a respected broadcaster in Beijing, very high profile. Does the fact that an Australian of her standing could be seized by police, taken into secret detention for 6 months without formal charges being laid, mean that no Australian is really safe in China? What's your view? What's your advice?
Well, as I say, Fran, we don't know, but the official travel advice from DFAT is that Australians should not travel to China, and not just because of the risk of COVID. We have publicly said that we believe Australians are at risk of arbitrary detention in China, and it's not just Australians. Citizens from other Western countries have faced the same risks. There are 2 Canadian citizens who have now been detained in China for 3 years with no apparent justification. You don't resile from the tag China hawk. In fact, I think you're a founding member of the Wolverines, which is the bipartisan committee that's formed, has been highly critical of China and raising issues around China. How do you think China will react, Beijing will react to your appointment as chair of this very important committee around security and intelligence? This is the committee that oversees national intelligence and security. Well, Fran, my views on the Chinese Communist Party don't differ much from the previous chair of this committee, Andrew Hastie's, and it's a very consistent position from the Australian government to appoint people to this committee who are very strong protectors of Australia's democracy and sovereignty.
And very strong critics of China. I think both of you were refused visas to China a couple of years ago, weren't you?
Yes, we were, but that shows, Fran, our genuine interest in engagement with China, our genuine interest in hearing their perspective, and it's unfortunate that we weren't allowed to go and visit China. I hold hope that one day I might be able to, and I look forward to that.
Another potential flashpoint for the committee that you now chair, you're running this inquiry into foreign interference in Australian universities, and ASIO's submission to that inquiry warns researchers and their families, this is university researchers and their families, are being, quote, threatened, coerced or intimidated by actors seeking to have their sensitive research provided to foreign states. How big a threat is this to our higher education and research sector?
I thought, Fran, that ASIO's submission to the committee was very sobering, and it's consistent with all the issues we're aware of publicly with our universities, from the high-profile cases around free speech of students and academics like Drew Pavlou or Lane Pearson at UQ and UNSW, to arrangements that universities have entered into with China's counterpart institutions unwisely, in my view, or naively, in my view. I think we do have really serious challenges with our higher education sector, but I think there is differences between universities, and one of the things I hope to draw out from this inquiry is those universities who do have best practice and can serve as models for other universities to lift their standards and better protect their institutions.
I haven't read the ASIO report, but I've only seen reports of it. Is it signalling that some of our technologies and scientific advances are falling into the wrong foreign hands? Is there proof
Well,
of
that's always a possibility. It's an absolute possibility.
Do they go further than possibility? They say that's happening?
Well, the ASIO does believe that there have been attempts to intervene in our university systems. There have been high-profile stories of hacks at our universities. ANU is one such example, but there are others. And we're also aware that through the reporting on the 1,000 Talents program, which is a talent acquisition program of the Chinese Communist Party, that some Australian university researchers appear to have entered into arrangements with the Chinese Communist Party unbeknownst to their universities, or not with full visibility of their universities, and that is very troubling.
Troubling too, the submission to your inquiry from the Federal Police. They say that academics and their families are being threatened by foreign entities. When ASIO warns about foreign states and the AFP are talking about foreign entities, are they referring to China?
Well, I think it's pretty clear, Fran, that the biggest country in this area is China, but it's not the only country in this area. And the lessons that we can learn from robustly defending our institutions against potential Chinese foreign interference can be applied to any other foreign state actor, particularly authoritarian states.
And when you talked about the university sector, this is an inquiry into the sector, you say when they acted unwisely or naively. Do you trust the sector when it comes to doing the right thing at these decision points? And is it likely, is your inquiry, do you think, likely to lead to any new further regulation imposed on universities? There's already been significant regulation reviewed and imposed in the last 18 months.
That's right, Fran. And the inclusion of universities in the Foreign Relations Bill, which gives the Foreign Minister the power to cancel international arrangements between universities in Australia and authoritarian-based universities overseas, I think is evidence that it's not just me, but it's the Parliament and the government that holds these concerns. This is an opportunity for universities to demonstrate that they do deserve that trust, that they are on top of this issue.
Aren't they already doing that, though? They are already cooperating with the government. There's been a new committee set up. Are you happy with the cooperation?
I am, but I think there's more evidence to be provided to the committee and the Parliament to reassure us that all universities are on top of this problem, not just some universities, and that they do take this threat seriously and they're well equipped to robustly respond to it.
James Paterson, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Fran.